Today is February 25th, 2022, and yesterday Russia invaded Ukraine. It made me feel very anxious, and we thought we would share our thoughts and feelings and everything about the situation. In the recent weeks, the talks about a possible conflict were escalating, and a few days ago we returned from our country house, and right before I went to bed, Tommy told me that Putin recognized these separatist republics in the eastern Ukraine. And I was like, oh. And then I went to bed and my brain started processing the information and I couldn't sleep at all. Like the whole night I was thinking about war, and I don't know why it affected me so much, because it wasn't the start of the war yet, but I don't know, my brain just started working and I was overthinking everything, and it was such a huge information for me. I don't know why.
Maybe it's because the situation is similar to what happened in Czechoslovakia in the 20th century.
Maybe. I've been reading a lot about history of Europe and Czechoslovakia in the 20th century on the internet. I was reading about the foundation of Czechoslovakia after the World War I and how it was doing, and then it's very frightening what happened at the beginning of the World War II. And there is the similarity, because there was this area around Czech Republic in the former Czechoslovakia. It's called Sudetenland, and there were mostly Germans in those area, because historically in this area of Central Europe, like from the 2nd or 5th century, there were Celtic tribes, so Germans and also Slavs came. So historically it was always like that. So there was this area of Czech Republic where Germans lived. And then Hitler came in 1938. He was saying that Germans suffer under the government of Czechoslovakia in these areas, so he's here to save them. Similar to what Putin is saying about the areas in eastern Ukraine. And yeah, that was a difficult time. So Nazi Germany met up with Great Britain and France, I think, and Italy. And they decided, without Czechoslovakia, that they will give Hitler this Sudetenland, part of Czechoslovakia, because he said and promised that that is all he wants. And then it will be over, like no conflict. Because right before that he had annexed Austria. So he already started like expanding, and Czechoslovakia was next. So they decided that okay, part of Czechoslovakia is going to be offered to Germany, and they will agree to what he wanted, and they just gave the area to him.
To preserve peace in Europe.
Yeah. And right after that, other countries around Czechoslovakia also wanted a piece of Czechoslovakia. So Poland took something, Hungary took parts of southern Slovakia, and yeah, so it was like birds of prey, like flying onto Czechoslovakia and tearing it to pieces. And a few months later, of course, it wasn't enough for Hitler, so he invaded Czechoslovakia completely.
And he took the rest.
Yeah. So he split the country. There was this satellite state, Slovakia, which was Nazi controlled. And then Czech Republic, it was called Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, and the government was German. And in this protectorate, Czech citizens were like second-class citizens, so very oppressed. Okay, so that was a short history lesson. But I wanted to say that a few days later, after Putin recognized these so-called republics, he invaded. And yeah, my anxiety skyrocketed because, I don't know, it feels so close to us. Like it's a regular war, so close to our region. So it's quite scary.
We feel safe. We don't worry about what would happen to us, but at the same time, it's like in our backyard. No, there's just a little tiny Slovakia between us and Ukraine. So it feels weird thinking that if Russia kept Ukraine, that Slovakia would suddenly border with Russia.
Yeah, and it's totally different because there are wars around the world, but it was always like war in Afghanistan or in Syria or I don't know where in the Middle East, and for us it's like, okay, there is war somewhere on earth. Of course it's very sad and tragic, but it always felt so far away, like it doesn't concern us somehow. But this is so close because there are many Ukrainians living in the Czech Republic, and yeah, it's not something very foreign.
Actually, Ukrainians are the biggest national minority here, at least officially.
Ukrainians often come to the Czech Republic for work because they earn more here than they would in Ukraine. So it feels very close, this war, and we are reading the news constantly and it's very sad.
So we worry if Russia takes over Ukraine, it will not be enough for Putin and he will demand more countries or something like that, just like Hitler did.
Yeah, Czechoslovakia wasn't enough for Hitler, and then he invaded Poland and everyone, and suddenly there was war everywhere. So you never know what happens in the head of a crazy person, because like it's very unpredictable. We are completely safe, luckily, because we are part of the European Union and NATO, that is North Atlantic Alliance of European countries and North American, US and Canada.
So we hope that we can rely on our allies if anything happens.
Yeah.
I don't think Russia would invade a NATO member, but
Yeah.
you never know.
You never know. And of course, countries that were part of Soviet Union, like direct part, are afraid. These are Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. They are part of the EU, but in the past, 30 years ago, they were part of the Soviet Union. So these countries have experience about how it is with Russia, and also Poland is at the borders to Belarus and Russia as well. And then like you go further south, there is Slovakia, and Slovakia directly borders with Ukraine, and that's why it also feels so close, because it's happening to the neighbor of Slovakia. It's so crazy. And of course Czech Republic and Slovakia weren't part of Soviet Union, like direct part, but we were in this Eastern Bloc under the influence of Russia. So I think these Eastern countries are more concerned and they want like bigger sanctions than some Western European countries, maybe.
Because we still remember what Russia or USSR can do.
Yeah.
And even though we were not part of USSR directly, Russia or USSR occupied Czechoslovakia for more than 20 years.
Yeah, that happened. So another history lesson or history trip. So all the countries in the Eastern Bloc were communist after World War II. But in Czechoslovakia in the 60s there were movements to make it more liberal and, you know, better.
Yeah, Prague Spring it's called.
It's called Prague Spring, yeah. But the Soviet Union didn't like this at all, these movements to make the country more liberal. So they sent a peaceful army to secure peace in Czechoslovakia. So in August 1968, tanks and heavy machinery came to Czechoslovakia, and from what I read, that was terrifying for people because there was an army, a foreign army, all of a sudden. The Czechoslovak army didn't resist, so there weren't any big fights. There were some smaller protests, but people were afraid because you don't want to protest when there is a tank standing right next to you and they would shoot you. And some people lost their lives.
I think that's when the most Czechs emigrated, right?
Yeah.
Also to the US.
Yeah. So then the regime became worse again, and it lasted for 20 plus years until the Velvet Revolution, when communist regimes started to fall throughout Eastern Europe. So the army, the Soviet army, was present here for 20 years.
Yeah.
They occupied, or they were keeping an eye on us to keep peace.
Just like we expect they plan to do the same in Ukraine.
Yeah, so we can again see the similarities. Putin sent an army to keep peace in Ukraine, or some bullshit, I don't know. So it's quite terrifying to see all these similarities. I don't know. And that's why I am concerned. We don't want to talk about politics much because we are no experts or anything. So these are just our feelings and what we read about history, because we were children when there was still a communist regime in Czechoslovakia.
I was 5. I remember when I attended kindergarten, we still had to call our teachers comrades instead of Mr. Mrs.
Yeah, so I was 3 years old, so I don't remember anything. And then the communist regime was over, so we didn't experience it firsthand, but you still know a lot of people that did, and under the oppression of Soviet Union.
It's sad to see that Russia hasn't changed for decades, and it's still the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, it's amazing to see politicians in our country or in the whole Europe condemn the aggression, the Russian aggression in Ukraine, and even though they have different views on other things,
even the opposition agrees with our government and everybody wants the hardest sanctions possible.
Yeah, exactly. So that's nice to see, and everyone wants to help Ukraine. We'll see what's next for Ukraine and for Europe. Hopefully my anxiety decreases, but it doesn't look good. I wanted to say that maybe in a few days when we publish this video it might be outdated already, so we don't know what's going to happen, but we just wanted to explain our feelings and how it is for us. So it's weird for us. It's weird because Ukraine is so close and it's a normal country. When you see images from Kiev, for example, and people, like, there was normal life just 2 days ago. They were going to work and like no one expected such a big invasion, because people were like, yeah, maybe in the eastern Ukraine, in these conflicted areas, something is going to happen, but now the whole Ukraine is under attack. So it's a big deal, and now people have to fight for their lives. So it's like, I can't imagine something like that happening here in Brno. Like from one day to another, we would not go to work and we would hide somewhere in our garage or somewhere. It's so terrifying and so unreal.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine.
Yeah. Why do these powerful people do this? Why don't they just enjoy their money and like go on vacation the whole year and just enjoy our money and let us be? I don't know. It's like in movies, these dark lords, they just want power. I don't get it. Why do you need power? It won't make your life better. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
For me, it's also scary when I think about the men in Ukraine that they have to fight. Like all of a sudden, you have to fight for your country.
Because we are pacifists, so we can't imagine shooting someone.
Yeah, it's so scary. Like one day, you live your normal life, you film videos for YouTube, and you go to work and everything, shopping, and the next day you are supposed to take a gun and go fight some foreign army. It's totally scary. So yeah, I think that's it. I don't know what else to say. Hopefully this war will end soon and people in Ukraine will be able to live their normal lives. But I don't know. I think it changed the world forever.
Yeah, I don't think it will go back to normal anytime soon.
Yeah. We should just hope for the best and we'll see. So until next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.